What's up, friends? Michele V here from Signature Stages, here to bust 3 myths about virtual events. And I'm going to give you one real problem that you should be worried about whenever it comes to virtual events. And if you don't know me, I'm Michele V, and I own Signature Stages, which is an event consulting agency, and we help people crush 6 and 7 figure days doing virtual events, and we set that all up for them. It's super fun. You should totally join us. But in this video, I am sharing with you the skepticism that I hear from people all the time, and here are the top 3. Number 1 is no one is going to show up. Michele, no one is showing up at virtual events right now. They are so sick of being on virtual at COVID. They are not going to show up. Number 2 is no one's going to hang out on Zoom all day long. If you're doing half day, 1 day, 2 day events, who is going to sit around that long and stare at their computer? And then the third thing I hear all the time is that in-person events are so much better. So we're going to talk about those 3 things. I'm going to give you the real problem with virtual events. And also in this video, I think it would be fun if I kind of share some insights. I want to share some insights, what successful people are doing too, because the truth is that all of the big names in business are using events. They're using in-person events and virtual events to create 6 and 7, even 8-figure days. Okay, and so whether you have an in-person event or you have no event whatsoever, you got to get on the bandwagon, because people like Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, Russell Brunson, Grant Cardone, everybody who's anybody is using events because we're going on a little tangent here, but because they are a way to get in front of your audience, capture their attention, show them what you have to offer, serve the pants off of them, show them the value of what you have to offer, and then sell them your high ticket thing. And because it's one-to-many, you can serve so many people at the same time, whether it's 2 people in your audience or 2,000 people in your audience, you get to serve them and spend the same amount of time, and therefore it saves you time, it saves them time, they get tons out of it, and it's just awesome sauce. So let's go into no one shows up though, okay? Because what if you create an event and no one's showing up? This is what I'm hearing lately. It's like, how did you get them to show up? Nobody's coming to my events, okay? But just the last couple of years, I've been doing the virtual side of a conference for a nonprofit that I've been working for, and we've been using this super fancy event software. So if you know me and you work with me, we do not use super fancy event software where you just jump on Zoom because that's the easiest thing to do. But you can go out there and you can buy this super fancy event software and spend over $10,000 to get this super software and to get them to do everything for you and blah, 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 blah. So we did that, and they do huge events for everybody all the time. And so they have statistics about how many people show up at that event. And do you want to know the average show up rate for paid events? It could be any kind of paid event. The average show up rate for paid events is 70%. 70%. Okay, so if somebody pays for your event, 70% of them are going to show up. And that event system, I'm not even naming names, but it didn't even have a very good way. It didn't have like a good follow-up sequence. It didn't have a good reminder sequence for people to show up. And in fact, they actually made it really difficult to join the event with lots of loopholes and hurdles and things like that. But still, despite all of that, 70% of people were showing up at those events. I don't know why. So if your rate is less than 70%, what you should be asking yourself is not, or telling yourself, I was just thinking about this today, sometimes we get in our mind and we tell ourselves, this is happening, I can't do this is not possible, I'm not good at XYZ, blah, 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 and we get into our head and about, I can't. But it's just like this useless circle that we spin out in, and I know, not speaking from experience at all why I was thinking about this, right? But whenever you get into that space where you're just spinning out in I can't, or I'm not good at this, or this doesn't work, it's just negative, 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 rather than asking yourself the question, how do I get that percentage? How do I get people to show up at the event? How do I get people to want to come to my thing? And so a little bonus tip in here. If you want people to show up at your event, there's a couple things that you can do, which we'll share in another video. There's several things that you can do, but one thing that you definitely want to do is you want to sell people your event. Okay? I mean that for several reasons. You want to sell them on coming to your event. You want to sell them a ticket to your event, but you also want to sell them on the amount of time that they're going to spend in your event. That's something that most people don't do. They're just like, hey, here's an event, you should show up. But really, if you sell them and you let them know, hey, this is what we're doing during the event, this is why it's worth your time, then they're going to show up a little better. But enough on that's like a whole nother video. So the second thing then is no one's going to hang out on Zoom that long. How do you get people to like pay attention? Because who here, type in the comments, who here has been at a super boring event? Super boring. I mean, I went to an author book launch one time that was 3 hours long, and whew, it was not the most exciting thing. It was pretty painful, but because I was one of the contributing authors, I felt like I gotta be there and I was clapping along with everybody else. But you don't want to bore your audience to death. You don't want them to be there just because they feel obligated to not leave, which a lot of them will leave because it's Zoom and they don't care, right? Right? You don't want them to feel obligated, but I want you to think about virtual events like Netflix. Okay, there's these virtual events that we call movies. Okay, and people will sit and watch those for hours and hours and hours because they're entertaining and they give them value. Am I right? So anybody here ever binge for like, it's like till 2 a.m. on something because you're like, they just keep being another loop. They just loop you into the next episode and you keep watching all the episodes. So it's not that people won't show up. It's not that they're going to be totally bored on Zoom. They'll pay attention if you make it exciting, if you're not boring, if you loop them back in, if you give them value, if they're enjoying it, then they're going to stay on your event. So again, that's another video talking about exactly how you do that. But that's thing number 2. They actually do show up. So, and they'll stay on. Thing number 3, in-person events are better. In some ways, Virtual Event Queen wants to admit that this is true. I love in-person events. Does anybody else with me? Like, I love touching people and feeling and giving hugs and talking and hanging out afterwards, and it's so amazing. It's wonderful. So definitely loving in-person events. But I want to tell you in this video why virtual events are better than in-person events, because that is also true. Hold on one moment, please. Pause for effect. Little knocker at the door. Okay, so in-person events are better, right? So virtual events are better because here's why. Because especially if this is your first virtual event, the amazing thing about virtual events is that there's so much less setup. There's less investment of your time, there's less investment of your money, and you have so many less things that you have to purchase, right? Like, you don't have to pay for coffee, you don't have to buy the menu, you don't have to, get people to actually come and then pay money to like stay at the hotel and things like that. You don't have to hire a huge event planner who is going to help you with all the little things. I just volunteered at an in-person event. It was School of Greatness, Lewis Howe's event. It was really super fun, but I volunteered there not too long ago, and there was so much that went into the event. You had to put together those swag bags, you got to put up the little selfie thingamajig, and you got to like have volunteers there who are going to make sure everybody knows where they're going, and it is a whole nother story, my friends. So virtual events is just like, turn your computer on, wave your hands around, tell them some stuff, and then you jump off, okay? So it's so much less investment up front. And the cool thing about virtual events is that you can still make lots of money with them, okay? So you can get people from all across the world. There's no limit, there's no capacity to how many people will fit into your Zoom room, except your Zoom subscription, which you can upgrade, right? So there's no real capacity to how many people can come. They can come from anywhere, which is awesome. And then when you get there, guess what? Virtual people and in-person people have the same credit card. They have the same piece of plastic, and they can totally use it on your high-ticket thing. So whenever you do it virtual, then for a much lower setup fee, you are able to get in a bunch of money, cash infusion, that you can then use if you want to create your in-person event. So you come on, you test things out with relatively little upfront costs. You make sure that your event is working amazing, that people love it, that it's converting, and that it's going to pay your bills whenever you want to buy a super fancy hotel and stuff like that. And then you can take all of that time and energy to create an in-person event if you so desire. Even the big names in the business like Russell Brunson. Here's what Russell Brunson does. If you don't know him, definitely look him up. He has a big annual in-person event that it's amazing. There's more than 6,000 people come, and they've also done it partly virtual. And then in between that annual event, like about every quarter, he does a virtual event. So even if you have an in-person event, a virtual event can supplement what you're already doing and just give you a huge cash infusion in between. So those are the 3 myths with virtual events. Hopefully I busted them for you, because that's what we're here for. And then I want to tell you, though, the real problem that people don't think about whenever it comes to virtual events. Because this thing about, like, how do you get people there? How do you get people to pay attention and engage? What do you say at the event? How do you get people to buy? Is virtual really better or in person better? All of that stuff is just nuances, right? Those are just little skills and decisions that need to be made, but they're figure outable, okay? They're not really a problem. You can pay someone to do all of this for you, in fact, and then you'd be all set, right? So that's not the real problem. The real limitation that I find with virtual events isn't how many people you get there. It isn't the conversion rate. It isn't your high ticket offer. All of that is super figure outable as well. But for most of my clients, the thing that limits them the most is how quickly they're able to grow. How many people, if you got 700 people into the room, 20% of them bought your thing, and you're flooded with like 180 people into your program, are you capable of taking on 180 people into your program, into your high ticket thing? Most businesses aren't ready for that. So the limitation that we tend to have is after that first event, we're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, that actually worked. That was amazing. Now they're like, you're hired. Like, let's build up the staff. Suddenly I'm in this position where I need to leverage and I need to grow. So the real question that I want to ask you is, how much do you want to grow? How quickly are you willing to grow in order to accommodate the amazing onslaught of clients that you're about to get from doing your virtual event? So if you loved this video, go ahead and press the subscribe button. Love to chat with you soon. If you want to chat together, I put my link down below if you're interested in setting up your own signature virtual event that acts like $1 million machine. Love to help you out. Otherwise, we're jamming. We'll see you on the next video.